Hey everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we're bringing you a how to play video for Carthage. Now this is a gladiatorial deck building game. I've had a lot of fun with this so far. I've still only played 2 or 1-on-1, but I may be getting a 4-player game together real soon. I sure hope so. Let's get into this game and I will show you how to play. Players first need to determine who the starting player is, and the rulebook says that is the player who most recently bled their own blood. That player takes a starting player token. Beginning with the starting player and proceeding clockwise in turn order, each player chooses a mini. Each player then takes the corresponding player board and starting action deck, which can be easily identified by the color and the letter found on each one. The players then shuffle the deck and place it face down on the player deck section of the player board. The player places 1 cube of her color on the number 15 of the armor track and 1 cube on the trophy space. When playing for the very first time, this is the recommended setup for the arena tokens. This setup can be found on page 2 of the rules and also on page 10. Page 10 also shows 7 other setups players can use. Keep in mind that these setups indicate certain tokens are only for 5 players or more. So if you were playing with less than 5 players, this token would be removed. And if you were playing with less than 4 players, this token would be removed. If players don't wish to use the setup shown on page 10, they can also create a random setup. To start creating a random setup, the last player in turn order chooses the arena tokens which will be used. That player chooses a minimum of arena tokens equal to the number of players plus 1, with 4 being the minimum number of arena tokens ever chosen. That player chooses at a minimum a number of arena tokens equal to the number of players plus 1, with 4 being the minimum number they choose. Also, for these purposes, pillars are not considered arena tokens, and the player may choose any number of pillars. Once the arena tokens have been chosen, they are placed out in the arena by the players one at a time in turn order. All arena tokens other than pillars must be placed inside the red inner circle. 1 arena token must be placed in the very center. Remember that pillars do not have to be placed in the inner circle, but they can be. In turn order, players now place their miniature in the arena. Gladiators must be placed on the exterior edge of the arena and may not be placed adjacent to each other. Next, players shuffle a theater deck and place it on the theater deck space. A player then takes the top 3 cards from the deck and places them face up in the designated discard space. Next, players shuffle the action deck and place it in the designated action deck space. You'll notice that the action deck has the same card back as the individual player action decks. Players can tell the difference because the individual player deck cards have the player symbol on them, while the action deck cards do not, but do have a cost on them. Players now draw the top 5 cards from the action deck and place them in the play area. And that's the setup. Carthage is a deck building game where players move around an arena and face off in gladiatorial warfare to earn crowd favor. They also will gain armor and battle to the death. Gladiators start as weak combatants, but as they gain crowd favor, they'll develop their tactics into a lethal combination of damage, movement, and armor. Each player begins the game with 15 armor. A player is immediately eliminated when her armor is reduced to 0 or less. The last gladiator alive is the winner. A game of Carthage is made up of multiple rounds, and each round consists of 3 phases: the theater phase, the action phase, and the favor phase. The first phase in a round is the theater phase. During the theater phase, the first thing players do is flip face up any arena tokens that are both unoccupied and face down. So in this case, this arena token would be flipped face up, as with this one. However, this arena token, while it is face down, would not be flipped face up because it's currently occupied. Next, the top card of the theater deck is drawn and placed face up in the discard pile. Players then read the theater card aloud and resolve any actions it may create. Some theater cards will be resolved immediately, and some will be resolved at the end of the actions phase. To start the action phase, players draw the top 5 cards from their player deck. These 5 cards will form the player's hand for the entire action phase this round. If a player would ever need to draw more cards than are currently in her deck, then she would shuffle her discard pile and draw the remaining cards. In turn order, the players play 1 card at a time. When a player plays a card, she resolves it immediately. Once a card is completely resolved, that card is placed in that player's discard pile, and then the next player will play a card. Play continues this way until all players have played all cards from their hands. Now let's take a closer look at the actions found on these action cards. This blue foot symbol means the player must move her gladiator the indicated number of spaces in the arena. In this case, 1 space. Players may not move onto an occupied space. However, in the case of a card that allows the player to move multiple spaces, she may occupy the same space multiple times. This red blood splatter symbol means that the player must inflict the indicated amount of damage to an adjacent opponent. The opponent then moves his armor tracker down the indicated number of spaces. If instead no player were adjacent at the time, then no damage will be dealt. Also, it's important to realize that all attacks, unless otherwise stated, are range 0, meaning they can hit an adjacent opponent. If an attack has a range, it will say so on the card, and a range number indicates the number of additional spaces away an opponent can be and still be struck by that attack. This green helmet symbol means the player moves the armor cube on her tracker up the indicated number of spaces. This golden trophy symbol means the player moves the favor cube up the indicated number of spaces. This white symbol in between the red blood splash and the golden trophy is a strike bonus. A strike bonus only occurs if the damage is actually dealt to an opponent. So in this case, if the player managed to deal the 1 damage to an opponent, then she would gain the 3 favor. This symbol on the right side of this card with the hex with a black arrow pointing to the right in it is a knockback symbol. An opponent who is knocked back moves the indicated number of straight spaces away from the opponent if able. So in this case, 1, 2 spaces. If a knockback symbol has no number in it, then it is 1 space. If a player should be knocked back but instead finds herself in any of these situations where she cannot be knocked back, she instead takes 1 additional damage. All actions on a card must be resolved as written from left to right and or from top to bottom. So in this case, the player would gain 2 armor, then 1 favor, and then move 1 space. If an action card contains 1 or more slash symbols, as you see 2 here, it allows the player to choose 1 section of the action card to resolve. In this case, the player may either deal 1 damage, gain 1 favor, or move 1 space. Once all action cards have been played, resolve any theater cards that indicate they are resolved at the end of actions. Then continue on to the favor phase. Before we move on to the favor phase, let's discuss these arena tokens and exactly how they work. When a player moves onto an arena token, she resolves the indicated action, in this case, plus 2 favor. When a player moves off of an arena token, the arena token is then flipped face down. The arena token will stay this way for the remainder of the round. Once an arena token is flipped face down in this way, it cannot be activated again until it has been flipped face up at the start of the next round. The final phase of each round is the favor phase, beginning with the last player and then continuing clockwise in regular player order. Players spend their accumulated favor to purchase new action cards or spend the favor on one of these 4 actions. A player will choose one purchase from any of these options, resolve it immediately, move her favor tracker down according to the cost, and then the next player will do the same. If a player does not wish to purchase anything or can't purchase anything, she passes. When a player passes, she is done with the favor phase for this round and immediately resets her favor to 0. The favor phase continues in this way until all players have either spent all of their favor or until all players have passed. Let's take a closer look at the player's 5 options for using favor during the favor phase. The first and probably most common use for favor is going to be the action cards. If a player purchases an action card, she must pay the favor cost indicated in the top left corner of that card. Once a card is chosen, it is placed in the player's discard pile on her player board. The action card is then immediately replaced from the action card deck. A player who takes the initiate action must spend 1 favor and then claim the starting player token. That player will be considered the starting player at the beginning of the upcoming theater phase. It's important to remember that the initiate action may only ever be taken once per favor phase. This helps keep those people in check who would just repeatedly spend all their favor reclaiming the starting player token no matter how many times somebody else claimed it. You know who you are. A player who takes the focus action may remove 1 or more cards from her discard pile and place them in the focus pile. The favor cost for this is 3 favor per card, so in this case, 6 favor. It's important to note that there is no minimum number of cards a player must have in her deck. She could even have less than 5. A player who takes the evaluate action pays 2 favor, then removes all 5 face-up action cards and places them in the focus pile. The player then draws 5 new action cards to replace the 5 that were just discarded. The player is then allowed to immediately purchase 1 of these new action cards that have just been revealed. This is not required, and the player still must pay the full cost indicated on the card. The lobby action costs 2 favor and allows the player to choose 1 card from the theater discard pile and place it face down on top of the theater deck. The player who does this is not required to reveal the chosen card to the other players. Also, the lobby action may be taken multiple times throughout the favor phase, but regardless of how many times the lobby action is taken, the players will still only draw 1 theater card during the upcoming theater phase. Once all players have either spent all their favor or passed, that round ends and a new round begins with a new theater phase. Rounds will continue in this manner until only 1 gladiator remains standing and is declared the winner. And that's how you play Carthage. There are also additional modes included with the game, including Arena Beasts, Solo Mode, Team Play, Equipment Cards, and Theater Legends. But I'll leave all of that for you to find on your own. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, consider subscribing. You can find me over on Twitter @boredoffline. And until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.